When the managing partners of a multi-billion-dollar enterprise have to count 25 bullet holes in their ground floor windows before certifying the safety of their workforce, you aren't just looking at a crime wave. You are witnessing a systemic liquidation of the urban American dream.
I wish I had the image to put up here. There are 25 bullet holes in the ground floor of the building that I lived in.
Bullets?
Bullets.
Bullet holes.
Bullet holes, like impacts from bullets. And across the street was a beautiful Dior store, and they would shop at that store at night by driving a van through the front window. And then 50 people would run to the store, empty the shelves. That store was across the street from me. They tried to carjack my security driver outside my front door, and there were probably 5 homicides within 500 yards of where I called home.
Lovely.
So
time to leave.
Time to leave. I had a colleague stabbed outside the front door of our building. I had a colleague's house burned down by an arsonist. I could just go on for the next 10 minutes about muggings, about bullets flying through people's cars. It became impossible to recruit people to Illinois because the question would be posed. I love the job, I love the people, but will my family be safe here? And you couldn't look somebody in the eyes and go, your family will be safe here. Like the best you could do is, I hope they will be. I hope they will be. And this is really a story of the progressive left. Rahm Emanuel as mayor, I think he did an extraordinary job of helping to deal with the issues that we had in our public schools, that we had with crime on the streets. One of the things that we did in Chicago that I'm really proud of is we used digital technology to forecast where crime could occur. I helped to fund this work, and we would actually pre-position police officers in these crime hotspots. We brought murder rates down in one of the most difficult neighborhoods by 50% in less than 2 years. That's lives saved. That's both political leadership, thought leadership, and execution from our police department. And we saw the J.B. Pritzkers and Lori Lightfoots of the world dismantle these gains that we were making that were really improving the lives of people who depend upon good government to make their lives better.
We are documenting an unprecedented asset impairment across the most iconic hubs in the United States, where the internal controls of public safety and fiscal sanity have suffered a total structural collapse. From the boarded-up windows of Chicago to the regulatory friction of New York and the eerie corporate silence in Seattle, the voter shareholders are being left with a portfolio of toxic debt, while the primary revenue generators, the businesses, and high-net-worth individuals who pay the bills are performing a mass exit strategy to more solvent markets. This isn't just seasonal volatility in the urban landscape. It is a total brand default caused by a leadership class that treats redistributive handouts as a viable business model, while the physical assets of their cities are literally being carjacked and burned down in broad daylight. I am Camilo Motato, and this is Camilo's House. As a certified public accountant focused on forensic verification, I approach a municipal crisis like a distressed debt audit, where the management discussion doesn't reconcile with the physical evidence on the ground. In a standard financial audit, if a CEO, the mayor, claims their city is safe and affordable, while their approval rating has plummeted below 10%, and their inventory, the population, is fleeing at record rates, you immediately flag the organization for systemic management fraud. Today, we are performing a national urban solvency audit. We are analyzing the materiality of the corporate flight from Chicago, the doxing of capital in New York under Scamdani, and the regulatory insolvency in Seattle. This is the moment where the audit of reality meets the narrative of progressivism, and the receipts show a material breach of the social contract. The operational default in Chicago is perhaps the most high-visibility failure in the country right now. Billionaire Ken Griffin, the managing partner of the multi-billion-dollar trading firm Citadel, recently liquidated his presence in the Windy City, moving his entire headquarters to Miami. From an investigative standpoint, Griffin's disclosure of why he left is a forensic nightmare for Mayor Brandon Johnson. Griffin noted 25 bullet holes in the ground floor of his building, a Dior store across the street being liquidated by a van driving through the front window, and a colleague being stabbed outside the front door. In auditing terms, when the unrecorded liability of violence makes it impossible to recruit and retain human capital, the entity is no longer a going concern. You cannot value a job if you cannot certify the safety of the family that depends on it. Griffin's move to Miami, was a strategic realignment away from a city that has written off public safety in favor of political ideology. The real estate ledger in Chicago is currently in a state of total market default. We are seeing building values crash to levels that would trigger an immediate impairment loss on any balance sheet. Take the forensic data of two recent transactions. One building sold for $41 million, a slight gain from its $36 million purchase in 2018, but another went for $62.5 million, which is a staggering one-third of its 2018 value. This equity wipeout means the city's tax base is insolvent. When downtown office occupancy plummets and building values are written down by 66%, the management at City Hall has to force a surcharge on the only remaining stakeholders, the poor homeowners. By doubling property taxes on residential assets to make up for the commercial deficit, the Johnson administration is accelerating the liquidation of the middle class. It is a death spiral of capital where the cost of doing business is now prohibitively high for everyone except the government dependent. While Chicago is defaulting on safety, New York City is defaulting on ethics under the leadership of Zohran Mamdani, or Scamdani, as he's known on the street. Mamdani recently performed a forensic act of hostility by doxing Ken Griffin, filming a video in front of Griffin's Manhattan home to demand more taxes. From a risk management perspective, putting a high-profile citizen's home on blast for political leverage is a material breach of professional ethics. Griffin's management response was clear. He revised his building plan for 350 Park Avenue, bailing on a massive redevelopment program that would have created 15,000 jobs and billions in economic inflow. Instead, he is doubling down on Miami. In the world of forensic verification, capital flows to where it is embraced, not where it is doxed. Mamdani's hubris has liquidated a $6 billion project to satisfy a dream of redistributive handouts that only leaves people dependent on government. The Seattle portfolio is also showing signs of critical infrastructure failure under Katie Wilson. The mayor of Seattle has created a transparency deficit so large that the public doesn't even know who is running the show. We are seeing junior underlings and photographers override the controls of the mayor's press conferences, preventing her from answering difficult questions about corporate flight. Starbucks, the city's legacy asset, has started to diversify away from Seattle, citing high taxes and a hostile business climate. When your primary brand asset moves its human capital to Nashville, where the tax burden is significantly lower, you have a negative valuation of your city's future. The Association of Washington Business, WB, recently disclosed a troubling audit finding. Nearly a quarter of businesses are now considering exiting the state. The forensic data shows a sharp spike in pessimism. 24% are looking to move, up from 17% in the previous quarter. Even more alarming, 55% of employers are considering liquidating their personal residence and moving to another state. This exodus of the tax base is the direct result of $10 billion in new taxes passed in 2025, followed by a millionaire's tax that acts as a surcharge on success. In auditing, if you tax the margin until the entity is unprofitable, the capital will perform a self-liquidation and move to a favorable jurisdiction. Seattle is currently auditing the rich right out of the city limits. The forensic verdict on these woke cities reveals a systemic management default. These mayors are attempting to raise wages artificially through government mandates, which only inflates the cost of inventory and reduces the headcount. When you command a business to pay more while charging them more in taxes, you are creating a deficit that can only be reconciled by raising prices or closing the doors. The government's role should be facilitating growth by cutting regulation and protecting the assets of the community. Instead, we see a redaction of common sense, where land use and construction are stifled by red tape, while criminal activity is amortized through non-enforcement. My professional opinion is that these cities will never recover under the current management team. You cannot recapitalize a city after you've liquidated the safety and doxed the capital. The Miami market is currently acquiring the equity that Chicago, New York, and Seattle have written off. Miami embraces business, education, and personal freedom, creating a positive ROI for the American dream. Until the voter shareholders perform a total board replacement and restore the internal controls of law, order, and fiscal restraint, the legacy cities of America will remain distressed assets in a state of permanent receivership. I want to hear from you. Is the corporate exodus a legitimate market correction for bad management, or is it a material breach of the social contract by the billionaires? Should Ken Griffin's $6 billion investment be redacted from New York because of Scamdani's tax policies? Let me know in the comments. Your perspective is the only audit that matters when the solvency of your city and the future of your family are sitting on the negotiation table. I am Camilo Motato, And this is Camilo's house. Subscribe to stay informed on the numbers, the laws, and the truth behind the headlines. Stay safe.